All right, so one of the things that you need to be able to do with your ti89s or with a given set of data is to kind of identify what it looks like on a graph. Actually, let me take just a second here. All right, so if we were given this set of data and we wanted to plot it on a graph, and if you guys were to do this by hand, it would be pretty easy, right? You just have an X and a Y coordinate, but I want you to be able to view it on your calculator. So if you're entering this on the calculator, the first thing that you need to be able to do is you need to be able to access the data matrix editor. Okay, the data matrix editor is located on that icon menu at the beginning, like when you turn your calculator on. When you turn it on, if you get this home screen, you can also access it by hitting this apps button. And then just coming down and selecting wherever it is on yours. In mine, it's the sixth one, but if you just use the data matrix editor. Okay, now when you access this, it's going to ask you or ask for one of three things. It'll either say a current or the current file or matrix, a new one, create a new one, or open one that you've saved. And you should be able to just use current. Now, when you set it up for the very first time, you do have to create a new one. So let me talk about how to create a new one. So if you hit the new button, so it's the option 3 here. Okay, what you need to do is you need to choose the type. You need to make sure that the type says data. Okay, it can't say matrix and it can't say list. The folder should stay exactly as it is, which should be main for most of you. Okay, so you really don't even need to change that. And then finally, variable means give it a name. And the name that I'm going to give it is any set of data that I'm going to use for this class. I'm just going to open up a folder or open up the file called algebra 2. So I'm just going to call it ALG2. So if I start typing that in, it's already locked on the alpha keys. So ALG, deselect alpha key to get the number 2. And once I enter all of that, I can then hit enter once more to confirm it. And for me, it's what's in use. It's the current one for me. So that allows me now to access that. Eric.
I was just wondering because whenever I have apps, it goes like lock thing. How did you get yours? Apps?
Yeah, well, on yours, yours is icons. Just scroll up through the icons and you can get to. It should be alphabetical. Okay. All right, so is everybody able to get into what looks like a little spreadsheet? And it should say data right here in this top left corner as well. And it should have C1, C2, those represent column 1, column 2, column 3. And then rows 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. All right, so once we access this data matrix editor, what we're then going to do is we're going to enter our data. In the C1 column, we're going to enter our X's. In the C2 column, we're going to enter our Y's. Okay, so here, if I enter on column 1, row 1, I'm going to enter just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Anytime I hit enter, it'll go straight down the column. So I can use that to enter my information. I can also use the up and down arrow keys. And then enter my corresponding Y's. So 22, 30, 33, 39, and 45. Okay. So I've entered all my data. Questions up through that step? All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plot my points. And I'm going to plot my points by hitting which tab do you think we will use for that, if you had to guess. Yeah.
Graph.
So eventually we'll go to graph, but if you look just on the screen that we're on right now, there we go. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to set up this plot. So under this F2 tab, plot setup. Okay, so you're going to choose F2. And then you see these this list of plots. Okay, it should highlight whatever the next current one is, or in this case, plot 1. What we're then going to do is we're going to use the F1 key to define the coordinates that we're plotting, so hit F1. Okay, and there's a number of different pieces of information that we are going to choose from. The first is the type. The type that we're going to choose is a scatter plot. And a scatter plot just means it's not going to connect our information with lines. It's just going to put the elements and just plot them by themselves. Okay, the second thing that we need to select is what we want those pieces of information, those data points, to be represented with. The easiest thing to use is a box. Okay, the box is something, it's just going to be a little open square that shows up on your viewing window or on the graph itself. The reason box is more useful is if you choose one of these other things, the dot and some of these other elements, they're really hard to see. So a box makes it very easy to see what the plot is representing. And then you're going to enter which column contains your x-coordinate and your y-coordinate. So if we look back here, our x-coordinate was contained in column 1, so we're going to enter C1. And our y-coordinate was contained in column 2. So we're going to enter C2. So that's all we need to enter on those pieces. So if we go to X, type in C. Now notice our alpha key was highlighted when I started to type in C, so I'm going to deselect that to hit the 1. I'm just going to use the up and down arrow keys here. Move to my next column. I need to hit the alpha key to access the C, the letters. C2 is my second one. And now I can just hit enter one more time to save it and confirm. And then you're going to see in this, you have these little symbols to represent, and a little check mark, a little check on the left of it to represent that we've entered information in plot 1. Okay, so now you're done. You have all the information that you need in order to view your scatter plot. So the next thing to do is to view it. Okay, now if we hit green diamond F3, which is the graph, it's not going to show up. Okay, the reason it doesn't show up here is your default settings for the window of your graph are -10 to +10, both the x's and the y's. Does any of this, do these points fall within that range? No, so we have to extend the domain and the range of our viewing window. And so before we can view it, we do need to set up our window. So to set up our window, we can see right in here this green diamond F2. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to change our settings. So Xmin and Xmax, that just tells you in the viewing window the minimum X coordinate and the maximum X coordinate. So as long as we're between 1 and 5, we're good. And so I'm going to change my X minimum, or actually I'm going to leave these just the way they are. A -10 and a +10, that fits all the information that I would be looking for in this graph. So I don't even need to change that. For me, this X scale of 1, that just tells you every mark on your viewing window represents a unit or 1 unit, whatever that scale is. If we start working with extremely large numbers or small numbers, you can change that. although you never have to change it. If you leave it as 1, it'll just look like there's a thick solid bar across the bottom or up and down, so it doesn't affect anything. I would never change that if I were you, unless you need to get into really small decimal differences. Okay, the y min and y max. Here we do want to change it. Again, we can leave our y minimum the same, -10. None of these go below that, so that one's fine. But our maximum y value has to exceed 45. So again, you can choose 100 if you want. I'm just going to pick 50 for here since we're not trying to predict numbers that fall outside of this range. So 50 works fine, and my scaling factor can be a 1 as well. It doesn't really matter. So once I get to this step, I'm going to hit enter. That confirms my window setting. And now I can go back and view my graph again. So if I hit green diamond F3, now I'm going to see where those points are located or plotted on the graph.